Hello, welcome to another fantasy football tournament series, number 81, and this is the World Cup Debutantes Cup, a tournament filled with all nations that have debuted in the World Cup since 1998. So between 1998 and 2018, why am I choosing that period of time specifically? Because you have to have a cutoff somewhere, because technically every single country that's ever played in any World Cup has debuted at some point, going back to 1930, so I thought it'd be nice to give a nod here to countries that have made their first appearance in the World Cup in the last 20 years, the last 5-6 editions. I think it's fair enough. And, as you can see here, there are 16 participants. 13. But that's because a total of 19 countries have debuted since France 98, and I can't have 19 teams in a tournament. So what I've done is take the lowest 6 ranked teams, as you see over here, and put them into one-off playoffs against each other. And the winners of these playoffs will qualify for the main tournament that you see here, and they will occupy the spots remaining in groups A, B, and C. So these are all the nations that have debuted, but it's an odd number, got to cut it down to an even number. A host nation I've gone with is Qatar, who is hosting the 2022 World Cup. They've never played in a World Cup before, but I felt it would be appropriate for the Debutante Cup to be hosted in a country that is going to be a debutante in the next World Cup. So, there you have it. So, the way this works is the playoff winners will qualify for the main tourney, 4 groups of 4, group winners and runners-up advance to the quarterfinals, etc. Instead of going with 2-legged playoffs between the 6 teams here, all these sides make it to Qatar, and they play in a series of one-off games where the winner progresses to the group stages. So, let's jump right to it. So, in the preliminary round, we have Ecuador versus Togo, South Africa versus Trinidad and Tobago, and China versus Angola. Ecuador debuted in the World Cup in 2002, Togo in 2006, South Africa in 1998, Trinidad and Tobago in 2006, China in 2002, and Angola in 2006. So, without further ado, Ecuador versus Togo, again, one-legged fixture, all games taking place in Qatar. I've gone with a 3-2 victory for Ecuador. 3-2 victory. So they qualify for the main tournament, where they will go into Group A alongside the other 3 teams. South Africa versus Trinidad and Tobago. I've gone with a 2-0 victory for South Africa. And China versus Angola, I'm going with a 1-1 draw, and China to win on penalties. I'm very bullish on China's chances of reaching the latter rounds in World Cup qualifying this time around, with players like the naturalized Elkeson and Wu Lei coming off a really decent Asian Cup appearance, and Marcello Lippi, who's still at the helm. So that means Ecuador, South Africa, and China qualify for the Debutantes Cup. And now let's go through the groups. So we have Group A, host nation, Qatar, Slovakia, Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, and Ecuador. Group B, we have Ukraine, Jamaica, Japan, South Africa. Group C, we have Bosnia-Herzegovina, Iceland, Ghana, and China. And Group D, we have Croatia, Senegal, Slovenia, and Panama. Now, before we go any further, just to note, why do I have Slovakia here and Slovenia here if they both played in World Cups past as part of Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia, respectively? Well, that's because FIFA considers the successor teams of Czechoslovakia to be the Czech Republic. That's why you don't see the Czech Republic here represented, despite the fact they qualified as their own country in 2006, because they are the successor team of Czechoslovakia. As far as Yugoslavia is concerned, Serbia is considered the successor of Yugoslavia, not Slovenia. So that's why you see Slovenia here. All right, so let's jump through the groups. The opening match between Qatar and Slovakia. We have Ivory Coast versus Ecuador. I'm going with a 2-0 victory for Slovakia. I do think it will be a losing start for the host nation, Qatar. And between Ivory Coast and Ecuador, going with a high-scoring 3-3 draw. That's the AC unit on. Then we have Qatar versus Ivory Coast. And with this match, I'm going with a 1-1 draw. And between Ecuador and Slovakia, I'm going with a 2-1 victory for Slovakia. Ecuador is not doing so hot lately, guys. They're not doing so well. And then the last games would be Slovakia versus the Ivory Coast and Ecuador versus Qatar. Slovakia is on top of the group with 6 points so far. I think this would be a draw. I do not see them getting the full 9, but they will top this group with 7 points. A 0-0 draw. And between Ecuador and Qatar, I liked Qatar's performance in Copa America. I think if they had just a little bit of an easier group, they might have progressed. Picked up a draw against Paraguay, came a few minutes away from another draw with Colombia. I think they'll be even better when they play again next year in Copa America, the current Asian champions. And I did not like Ecuador's performance in Copa America. They're not very much so a tournament team. Qatar's at home here. Qatar beats Ecuador. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable, fair call to make. And I will go with... a 4-1 victory for Qatar. I think they pull out all the stocks here. Almo Azali gets on a hat trick. And the host nation finds a way into the next round. This is the worst Ecuador team I've seen in years, to be honest. So Slovakia wins the group on 7 points. Qatar, the host nation, advance on 4 points. Ivory Coast in third on 3 points. Without losing a single game, Ivory Coast draws all 3 of their games, but they do not have enough to advance. And Ecuador in last on 1 point. So 7, 4, 3, 1. Ivory Coast and Ecuador out. Bittersweet for the Ivory Coast. Moving on to the next group, we have Ukraine, who is in stellar form at the moment. They will be playing in Nations League A next season, in pole position to qualify for Euro 2020. So Ukraine versus Jamaica. I'm going with I think it'll be a 1-0 victory for Ukraine. I think Jamaica will match them in terms of physicality. They're also very well coached under Theodore Whitmore. They just reached their 3rd successive Gold Cup semifinal, but Ukraine are flying high. So I'm going to give Ukraine, they'll start out with a tenuous 1-0 victory over Jamaica. Nothing profound. Japan versus South Africa. I'm going to go with a 2-1 victory for Samurai Blue here, Japan. We've got Ukraine versus Japan, and we've got South Africa versus Jamaica. I'm going to go with a 2-0 victory for Ukraine over Japan. And between South Africa and Jamaica, a 2-1 victory for Bafana, South Africa. Then we have, Jamaica versus Japan, who played each other in the 1998 World Cup. We have South Africa versus Ukraine. Jamaica defeated Japan 2-1 in 1998. Here, though, I think Japan will emerge victorious. Well, this could be a draw. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to say this is a draw. I wouldn't feel comfortable predicting Jamaica to finish on 0 points. I think they're better than that. And I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. And between South Africa and Ukraine, it's going to be a sweep for Ukraine. They're going to win all 3 games in this group. I think they are an excellent contender for a potential dark horse candidate to reach the quarterfinals of Euro 2020. And I'm going to give them a 3-1 victory here over South Africa. So I've got Ukraine winning the group on 9 points. I've got Japan on 4 points. South Africa on 3 points. Jamaica on 1 point. So South Africa and Jamaica are out. Ukraine and Japan go through. The next group, Bosnia-Herzegovina versus Iceland. Ghana versus China. What do I think? Bosnia-Herzegovina, they don't look like they're going to make it to Euro 2020. I still think in a group like this, they have a little bit too much individual quality. So I would pick them to get a 2-1 victory over Iceland here. Ghana versus China. It's going to be some harsh lessons for the Chinese here. I'm going with a 4-0 victory for Ghana here. I think a complete mismatch, just contrasting styles of play. To be honest, I don't think I would favor China against really most African sides. 4-0 for Ghana. Then we have Bosnia-Herzegovina versus Ghana. But then again, I had China beating Angola on penalties, which Angola is not that strong, so I think it makes sense. And then we have China versus Iceland. It has to be in that order. So Bosnia-Herzegovina versus Ghana. I will go with a 2-2 draw. Thought about giving Ghana the upset win here. Really tempted to do it, but I give Bosnia, despite not being in position to make it to the next Euros, they're the best team in this group. But it'll be a 2-2 draw. Between China and Iceland, another thumping here. Iceland defeats China, and they do so 3-0. I'll say 3-1. I don't want China to go without a single goal, so 3-1 for Iceland over China. And then the final game we have. What do we have? Iceland versus Ghana. China versus Bosnia-Herzegovina. Gonna go with a 0-0 draw between Iceland and Ghana, and between China and Bosnia-Herzegovina. I'm gonna go with just a 2-0 victory for Bosnia to close out the group. Just a 2-0 victory. So Bosnia wins the group on 7 points. Ghana on 5 points in second. Iceland on 4 points in third. China in last with 0. Iceland and China are out. Bosnia and Ghana go through. Now moving on to the next group. You're going to like some of these controversial calls here. Croatia versus Senegal. And Slovenia versus Panama. I'm going to go with an opening upset victory for Senegal by a scoreline of 2-0 over Croatia. We know Croatia, they've been all over the board since their run to the World Cup final in 2018, and I have rated them highly in prior tournaments in my fantasy series. I also think in the last 16 months or so, they've been a side where they've kind of been all over the place. And they're struggling in their qualifying group, lost at home to Hungary, but then they rebounded respectively and were victorious against Slovakia 4-0 on the road, and then they dropped points to Azerbaijan. So a bit choppy for Croatia, and I think Senegal is one of the best teams in Africa. So an opening quote-unquote upset here, 2-0 victory for Senegal. Much how they stunned Poland in their group in the World Cup. Slovenia versus Panama. Is the Slovenian comeback real? As we saw in the September international break, when they garnered 6 points and have now put themselves in second place to qualify for the Euros, including a victory over Poland. Will it last, or is it just smoke and mirrors? That remains to be seen. However, they would beat Panama here. And they will beat Panama 1-0 here. I think Panama would put numbers behind the ball. 1-0 victory for Slovenia. Then we have Croatia versus Slovenia. And we have Panama versus Senegal. Again, guys, I gotta make some big calls here, and I think we could be seeing a resurgence from Slovenia. But I'm gonna go with a draw here. A draw. Yeah. A 0-0 draw between Croatia and Slovenia. And Panama versus Senegal. I'm gonna go with a 1-0 victory for Senegal. So Senegal's on top so far. Their last game is against Slovenia, and Croatia's in pretty big trouble. They have to win. So we have Senegal versus Slovenia and Panama versus Croatia. I'm going to go with victory for Slovenia. Yes, I am buying it. My chips are on the table for the Slovenian rise. Maybe they will go on to be pipped by Austria for that second spot in Euro 2020, but I've got a feeling about Slovenia. And you know what? They're certainly a side that has the quality. They're almost certainly not League D caliber, despite having a really poor Nations League. Probably going to win League D in the next season and be promoted back to C. But yeah, I'm feeling it. I'm going to go with a 2-1 victory for Slovenia over Senegal. Between Panama and Croatia, I'm going to go with a 3-0 victory for Croatia. Make that 4-0 victory for Croatia. But they will not have enough to advance. They are my flop of the tournament. Croatia will not advance past the group stages. Slovenia wins the group on 7 points. Senegal in second on 6 points. Croatia in third on 4 points. Panama in last on 0 points. Croatia and Panama are out. Does that mean I'm going to predict Croatia to do poorly in future fantasy football tournaments? No, not necessarily. Like I said, they're kind of jumbly at the moment. But moving on to the quarterfinals, guys. We have Group A winners Slovakia versus Group B runners-up Japan. Got Bosnia-Herzegovina, the group winners in C, versus the runner-up of Group D, Senegal. On the other side of the bracket, we have Group B winners Ukraine versus Group A runners-up and host nation Qatar. Surprise Group D winners Slovenia versus Group C runners-up Ghana. So get a good look. These are the quarterfinals. So the first quarterfinal, Slovakia versus Japan. I'm going to go with a 1-0 victory for Slovakia. I think this will be very tight and tense. Japan will be the better team for large stretches of the game, but Slovakia will come through. Bosnia-Herzegovina versus Senegal. This is where I think Bosnia's troubles will plague them here. I favor the World Cup participants and African Cup of Nations runners-up here. And this, I think, would be another 1-0. Knockout games sometimes tend to be very low scoring. I'm picking Senegal to get through into the semifinals. Ukraine versus Qatar. 2-0 victory for Ukraine. Clean sheet. Thank you very much. Qatar is out. Congrats getting to the knockouts. Slovenia versus Ghana. Would love to have another African semifinalist here, but the story continues for Slovenia. They defeat Ghana by a scoreline of 3-2. 3 goals to 2. So let's get to the semifinals. 3 out of the 4 teams are Europeans. Slovakia versus Senegal. Ukraine versus Slovenia. So these are the semifinals. Slovakia versus Senegal. The Lions of Teranga are going to punch their ticket to the final of the Debutante Cup with a 2-1 victory. Senegal's going to the final. Slovakia is the third place game. Ukraine versus Slovenia. Going with another clean sheet for Ukraine. 1-0. I rate Ukraine very highly right now. I would say they are a top 20 national team, possibly a top 15 national team right now. So the third place game, we have Slovakia versus Slovenia. A lot of people confuse them for the same country. Similar flags, too. That doesn't help. Slovakia versus Slovenia for the bronze medal. I'm going to pick a victory here for Slovakia. Slovakia wins this game 3 goals to 2. So Slovenia, great run for them. Finishing 4th. Slovakia finishing 3rd. The final of the Debutante Cup is Senegal versus Ukraine. Heart says Senegal will pull this off. But the head says Ukraine. And head says Ukraine will win this match 2 goals to 1. So Ukraine wins it. Senegal finishes in 2nd. Ukraine wins the World Cup Debutante Cup. So Ukraine comes in 1st, Senegal comes in 2nd, Slovakia comes in 3rd, Slovenia comes in 4th. By the way, guys, this is not a historical tournament, so in other words, this is not like Ukraine 2006 versus Senegal 2002. These are just the teams as they are now in 2019. It's not a historical tournament. It's only historical in the sense that all the nations you see participating are those that made their debut since 1998. And I like how Ukraine looks presently. So, thank you for watching. Leave a comment below, like, subscribe. Hopefully I'll see you soon, God willing. Until then, have a good one. As always, peace out.